Hey, how's it going, everybody, and welcome back into the SFS channel. My name is Gavin, and today I've got my top 24 wide receivers for Week 3 NFL action here. If you'd like access to the rest of my weekly positional fantasy football rankings, you can head down into the description of today's video and check out SFS Gold, which is where I've got my quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, and defenses posted weekly, based off of assessing matchups, situations, health, skill, all that great stuff, and then stacking players up against one another and figuring out which are the best options for your lineups on a week-to-week basis. So if you're new around here, make sure to drop down and click that subscribe button and turn the bell on so you're never late for an episode and are notified whenever I post a new piece of daily content here. And give today's video a like before we get started. But with that being said, let's hit that intro and get straight into today's video. Alrighty, here we go. So just like that running backs episode for today, we're going to be going in ascending order, starting at the number 1 spot and making our way to the number 24 position. But Tyreek Hill pencils himself in as my top wide receiver for this week. He had a down performance last week, but I'm not worried about that whatsoever. Don't panic. There's no reason to do so. He's tied to Mahomes, has track speed, can score on literally any given touch here. The Chargers on a matchup that really scares me all that much, and I think that based off of the other matchups we see top-end fantasy receivers having this week, Tyreek's the best option here. He's got the most upside, and that floor value should be back here after Mahomes struggled to find him with the football in Week 2. D-Hop at the number 2 spot here against the Jags. The one concern I have is last week he started super hot in the first quarter and then was dang quiet for the rest of the game. Now, my concern is similar this week, as I think D-Hop can get out here in the first half, run crazy on this Jags secondary, maybe score a touchdown, maybe 2, you never know. But what worries me is I think this is going to be such a blowout in favor of the Cardinals because that pass rush is so good and the weakness of the Jags is their offensive line, and because the Jags' defense is so bad and Kyler Murray has been lethal to start the season here. I fear that down the stretch of this game it's going to be a lot of running out the clock and front running from the Arizona Cardinals. So that's the one concern I had here that kept D-Hop from being at that number 1 position, because I think this Jags matchup is a heck of a lot easier than the Chargers are even for Tyreek Hill. But still, the fact that Tyreek can score on any given touch, and I expect that that game will be just a little bit more competitive. Obviously, I think Justin Herbert and Pat Mahomes will go back and forth. I've got D-Hop just a notch lower. Davante Adams. Now, there's nobody on the San Francisco 49ers roster that can guard Davante Adams one-on-one. But what concerns me is I don't think Aaron Rodgers is going to have all that much time to throw the football, which tells me he's not going to be able to hit as many deep passes as we might see head Davante Adams' way on a week-to-week basis. San Fran, it's got a dang good front seven, dang good pass rush, and the Packers are currently suffering with offensive line health. That's going to have people in Aaron Rodgers' lap faster. He's going to be under pressure sooner, and he's going to be forced to make a decision with the ball a lot quicker. So maybe we see Davante have a lot of short underneath games, similar to what he had last week against the Lions, because they were playing too high shell defense, and they were not letting them throw over the top for most of that game. But again, Davante is Davante. He's going to get a lot of targets thrown his way. A lot of passes are going to be heading in his direction. Maybe if the Packers can grind out some drives, get in the red zone, he can score from 20 yards out. But I don't expect him to hit a bomb over the top this week, so I think his upside's a little capped in comparison to normal games. DK Metcalf. Now, he's kind of been overshown by Tyler Lockett here to start this season. Both of these are dang good deep route runners. Both of these players are dominant forces down the field. But I think DK is still the better overall player, or at least has the better fantasy potential for us. I love Tyler Lockett. You'll see that reflected in the rankings here. I've got him high up here, and he's coming up in just a few names. The things he's been doing this season to start things off have been massively productive for the Seahawks offense. I just see a greater touchdown upside for DK, because if the Seahawks actually have to start grinding drives out and not scoring from 60 yards out, DK's the bigger red zone body presence. I'd say he's faster, has better straight line speed, and he can go up there and win that contested pass. So the Vikings secondary is a barren wasteland of disappointments. DK's going to come out here and have a productive game. On the other side of that matchup, Justin Jefferson. Now, similarly, there's no one on the Seahawks roster that scares me that's going to, quote-unquote, clamp up or lock down Justin Jefferson. He's such a good route runner. He's going to get open. He's going to find his space. Kirk Cousins is going to be forced to throw the football again a lot this week because he's trying to catch up. And last week, the Vikings should have won that game against the Cardinals, but they just biffed a field goal and didn't win that game. But they're going to be in a similar situation this week. Maybe they're not quite as close and not quite in the game late because the Seahawks, I would say, are still a better team than that Cardinals team, although it is close. But the point being here, high passing volume for the Vikings offense. You're going to probably be trailing in the fourth quarter. Jefferson's your best receiver, your best route runner. Go out there, get him the football. He's got a lot of upside this week. Diggs, I would like to have him higher on the list, but I think the matchup is relatively tough. Josh Allen has not been quite as good under pressure this season as he was last year, at least in that Pittsburgh game. Now, last week he absolutely fried Miami, but Miami was struggling to get anything going offensively, and their defense was dog-tired because they were on the field the whole game. This week, I expect Washington's front seven to increasingly get better and better every week. Now, their pass rush did dissipate and disappear in the second half, so that's why I still think I see top-end upside out of Stephon this week. Obviously, him and Josh Allen, are a picture-perfect combination for a quarterback-wide receiver combo and can light up defenses. But I think that it's a little bit more challenging than some of the names at the top of this list. And Diggs hasn't quite been the elite upside producer that we hoped from him when we drafted him this season. So I'm still a Diggs believer, just a little bit cautious with him here this week. Keenan Allen, one of the safest floor players in fantasy, at my number 7 spot against Kansas City. He's going to be peppered with targets this week. The Chiefs are going to score points on the Chargers, so the Chargers are going to have to answer them and in turn score points on the Chiefs. Keenan Allen's the best passing threat in this offense, or the best target for his quarterback, Justin Herbert. He should see a lot of volume come his way and be very productive with those looks. Here he is, Tyler Lockett for the Seattle Seahawks. Again, nobody on this Vikings roster can cover him or DK Metcalf. Pick your poison if you're Russell Wilson. You're going to hit a bomb to one of these two players. Calvin Ridley against the Giants. Now he does have some tougher coverage here. James Bradbury's legit, but Matt Ryan's got to throw the ball somewhere. I mean, Kyle Pitts is good. Kyle Pitts produced better in week 2 than he did in week 1. Showed some improvement there. That was impressive. But, the Giants got tossed on by the Washington football team last week, and Terry McLaurin had a field day. So that doesn't necessarily make me feel that Calvin Ridley has no potential to produce this week, because I think he'll come out here and have a very successful day, especially given how good of a route runner he is. So a little bit lower on the list. I'd say that's more so a reflection of how good the other opportunities, matchups, and players are, as opposed to any concern and fear I have for Ridley's fantasy outlook this week. Cooper Kupp, the wide receiver 1 right now, not quite valuing him as highly as he's been producing, because I think that number is going to taper off and slow down just a little bit here. But the Buccaneers have basically forced teams through 2 weeks now to stop running the football and start airing it out. And their secondary is actively the weakness of this team, and that's the part of this team that's getting exploited. Carlton Davis, Sean Murphy-Bunting, their top 2 corners, have went down with injuries. Now, I have to check myself on the status of Carlton Davis and see if he's going to be ready to go for this game. But I would assume Sean Murphy-Bunting has not recovered from that dislocated forearm or elbow, whatever the case was. It was a pretty nasty-looking injury. The point being, though, Cooper Kupp is such a dang talented player that Matt Stafford, with his arm talent, when they're going to be, again, forced to throw the football and not set up that run game and get that play-action game going, they're going to have to throw to somebody. Cooper Kupp's been the favorite target here through 2 weeks to this point. I don't think that I'm buying into him as a top 5 to 7 fantasy option, but I think he can hover right around that 7 to 10 range here for the majority of this year. CeeDee Lamb against Philadelphia. CeeDee has got so much talent after the catch. He is dynamite, fast, elusive, a playmaker. CeeDee Lamb's got it all. The star, it factor. Against Philly here, he is going to have chances to produce. They do have one tough corner, Darius Slay, that he might have to go up against in various situations here. But I'm confident he can get open. I'm confident Dak Prescott's going to trend back up in the passing numbers this week, and CD should get his volume opportunity to play and be a very productive receiver at the end of the night. A.J. Brown against the Indianapolis Colts. Now, this is a receiver that I have some question marks about. I did end up not loving him in this matchup last season, and he only had 1 reception. So that's kind of the basis I've had. A lot of teams, or excuse me, a lot of players, when they've been playing the Colts already here through 2 weeks, I've been skeptical of because of how good they were at preventing deep passes last year. But Indy's defense has cracked a lot, and I think that A.J. Brown, although he struggled last week, should come out here and have a pretty dang productive performance. I don't know. I think he's going to see a couple deep shots. I think Julio Jones will as well. It's not a matchup I love, but I think that the talent will win. I think that, the 9 targets that A.J. Brown had last week, he only hauled in 3 of them. That catch percentage will rise here this week, and he will have a more impressive game. Terry McLaurin for the Washington football team against Buffalo. Now, he's going to have some stingy coverage thrown his way again this week. Tre'Davious White is a dang good cover corner for the Bills, and he's probably going to see a lot of Terry McLaurin in this game. And he did quite a number on even a Chase Claypool in week 1, and he's been pretty dang good here. Obviously, the Dolphins had virtually no offense last week, so that's a hard situation to judge. But Terry should still be productive. He did very good against James Bradbury last week. Again, another one of the top corners in the league. And for the route running that Terry has and the dependency that Taylor Heineke has in him, this should still be an advantageous matchup for us. Adam Thielen against Seattle. Again, Minnesota's going to have to score points. As much as I don't like Adam Thielen, as much as I think he's incredibly touchdown productive or dependent, I will continue to have him on my must-sell wide receivers list because that count is going to taper off sooner rather than later. They still got to score points. This game in particular, against the Seattle Seahawks, you're going to need to find the end zone, hit pay dirt. Adam Thielen's been the guy who has the nose for the end zone so far in the passing game for the Vikings over the last calendar year and a half. Stick with it. It should continue to be productive in this given situation. Robert Woods at this number 15 spot. Same thing as Cooper Kupp. The other wide receiver on the other side of the field, who many still believe is the number 1 pass catcher in this Rams offense. In that matchup where Tampa Bay is going to take away the run game and ask Matt Stafford to drop back and throw it a heck of a lot of times. So if Robert Woods can get back on track, be productive, see a higher volume of passes head his way this week, he should get the train rolling again here and continue to be one of the best floor plays in fantasy football. Amari Cooper against the Eagles, he's been a Philly killer, and he has been a very productive player in various streaks of his career with the Cowboys against this Eagles team, but he's a little banged up right now. That faded him down my list, I guess you would say here, a handful of spots because Amari Cooper does not play the best while injured and while not 100%. This is thankfully a home game, so I think that plays a little bit to Amari's benefit as we've seen some quieter road performances from him here, but he still should be a quality wide receiver 2 candidate, and he's always a threat to hit one deep over the top and make a big play. Chris Godwin for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, I don't love the Bucs pass catchers in this matchup because you've got a dang tough Rams defense to go up against, including Jalen Ramsey guarding someone in this matchup. Now, I don't expect Ramsey to follow Chris Godwin in the slot for most of this game, but if Chris Godwin lines up outside, he could still see some coverage there. We'll get into that Jalen Ramsey matchup and how I see that impacting this football game in just a second. But I think at the end of the day, Chris Godwin's ceiling's a little capped this week, but he does have a very steady floor, obviously catching passes from Tom Brady. Allen Robinson. Now, this is lower than I'd like to have A-Rob, but A-Rob has also been underproductive so far this year. He's been a bit disappointing, if we're being quite honest. A third-round pick at the wide receiver position hasn't lived up to it. I think that part of that's a quarterback change. Part of that's the fact that Andy Dalton was literally the lowest throwing downfield passer in the league. Like his percentage of passes and the actual depth his throws reach downfield was by far and away shorter than every other National Football League quarterback. Justin Fields is under center now. This should finally help. Justin did give A-Rob a couple deep targets last week. He wasn't able to complete them, but we need to see an uptick in production here. We need to see A-Rob get back on track, start producing, making those incredible contested grabs that he's been known for, and very underrated with his time as the Chicago Bears. So, A-Rob, I'm believing in you here. Not a super easy matchup against the Browns, but it's going to be a game. Again, Chicago is probably going to have to pass to stay in this one. He has the opportunity for a nice ceiling this week, but what I want to see is him just get back to those floor numbers and to be a productive player. In that sense, Mike Evans at number 19. This might seem very, very low for Mike, but Mike Evans is still a player who's got a terribly tough matchup. He's going to be probably the guy I expect to be shadowed by Jalen Ramsey for most of this game, and with Antonio Brown landing on the COVID list, I think that makes this even more likely. Mike was a touchdown-dependent player last year, and we saw him score 2 last week. Maybe this is Mike's off week. We don't want to test that theory here. I think that the touchdown dependency is a very real thing for Mike Evans, and if he doesn't have elite yardage production, which is not something I expect to be the case this week, and he doesn't have those touchdowns, the floor gets really scary low this week, so I'm staying away from Mike if at all possible. Julio Jones, not loving the matchup here, but I'll take the talent. I'll bet on Julio as a player to get open downfield, to create space against this Indianapolis Colts defense that hasn't been quite as stout as I expected it to be. I think Julio can still come out here and produce, but again, his ceiling is definitely more favorable than his floor. Mike Williams, how about this guy bursting back onto the scene here? He's certainly not a rookie. He's well into, his 4th or 5th NFL season now. He finally looks like the guy the Chargers drafted at the top end of the first round, making contested grabs, scoring touchdowns, having productive games for his football team. As long as Mike Williams stays healthy this season, him and Justin Herbert are going to become a very real combination. And against a Chiefs team that I expect that high passing volume in this football game, because there's going to be points hung on the board by both sides, Mike has a great opportunity, a great ceiling, and could potentially be a week-winning piece if you can get him in there as a flex position, even if you've got the other options at your wide receiver spot. Courtland Sutton against the Jets. Courtland was insane against the Jags last week. His first game without Jerry Jeudy in the lineup this season for the Broncos, he feasted. The Jets don't have much better in the secondary, and I think that Courtland can do that similar, maybe not quite as extreme, but if he finds the end zone and has similar production, he's going to be looked at as a very, very productive piece this week. I think that this Broncos offense is a little bit underrated, and because Teddy can keep those drives out there on the field for so long, they're able to produce very, very quality numbers with their pass catchers. So Courtland Sutton, someone I'm definitely starting if I have the chance. Marquise Brown, he proved me wrong. He looks a lot better this season. He's bulked up, refined his route running, become a more mature player and a more well-rounded wide receiver. Hollywood, he's got what it takes now. I think that I can truly believe in him as a fantasy player moving forward here. And against the Lions defense that lost Jeff Okudah, and then they lost their second-best corner after that, this is a banged-up and beaten secondary and a group of players that is probably going to give up some big plays over the top, even if it is this Ravens offense and this is a run-first football team. So Marquise, keep your eye on him. He's been the most productive Ravens pass catcher week 1 and week 2. Don't be surprised if that continues here into week 3. And then finally, Chase Claypool. The situation here with Deontay Johnson's injury, there's a lot of unknown there. I don't exactly know what I'm expecting from an injury standpoint. I don't know when I'm expecting him back healthy. There's too much question marks. And for Chase Claypool, who's got that red zone body to score contested grabs inside the 20-yard line, who can make plays over the top, who can do great things with the run after catch, and who can be used as a wide receiver run game player. There's so much dynamic ability that I'm a big fan of here. And against Cincinnati, which is a defense filled with number 2 corners, in my opinion, no one's a true shutdown number 1 on this roster. Chase Claypool's got every chance to come out and have a big week. Alrighty, those are my top 24 wide receivers for week 3 fantasy football. Again, if you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to drop down, click that subscribe button, and turn the bell on so you're never late for an episode. Give today's video a like as well if you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace out.